I had the chance to marry a princess, the kind of woman people dream about, wealth, beauty, a title that could open any door. But instead, I walked away and chose a woman who owns nothing but her heart. Why? You're about to find out. When I first met the princess, it felt unreal. Everywhere she went, heads turned, people whispered, doors opened before she even touched them. She spoke with elegance, moved with grace, and lived in a world where problems were handled by other people. But deep inside, there was a distance. Conversations were polite, not real. Laughter felt rehearsed, like it belonged in a picture, not in life. And then, one ordinary afternoon, I met her. No title, no fame, not a single reason the world would call her special, except one. She looked at me like she could see right through the walls I didn't even know I'd built. The first time we talked, it wasn't about fancy places or rich people's problems. It was about the rain that ruined her laundry that morning, and how she actually found it funny because she danced in it anyway. That laugh, it wasn't staged. It wasn't trying to impress me. It was raw, warm, alive. The princess could give me a life of comfort, but this woman gave me something far rarer. The feeling of being known. And that's when I began to notice. Every moment with her made me forget about status, money, expectations. But choosing her would mean walking away from a life people would kill for. The pressure started quickly. Friends told me I was a fool. Family questioned my judgment. Do you even realize what you're giving up? They asked. I realized they didn't see what I saw. They saw the crown, but not the weight it carried. They saw the palace, but not the loneliness inside its walls. The moment of truth came faster than I expected. An invitation arrived. A royal gala. Not just any gala. The night where the princess would publicly introduce me as her future husband. My family was thrilled. The media was already sniffing around. And the princess, she looked at me like the deal was done. But inside, my heart felt heavy. That night wasn't about love. It was about a headline. And then, the common woman called me. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. She just wanted to know if I'd eaten dinner. Not a word about the event. Not a hint of jealousy. Just care. I found myself standing in the royal dressing room, surrounded by tailor-made suits, gold cufflinks, shining shoes. Everything was perfect, except me. I kept hearing her laugh in my mind, the way she wrinkled her nose when something surprised her, the way she made a plate of food feel like home. The princess's world was flawless, but hers was real. Minutes before the gala, I stared at myself in the mirror and asked the question that changed everything. Do I want to be admired, or do I want to be loved? I knew my answer. Instead of stepping into the royal ballroom, I stepped into a cab. My driver asked, "Where to?" And I said the name of a small neighborhood, where people lived in narrow streets, and laughter spilled out of open windows. When I got to her place, she was in the kitchen, hair tied back, stirring a pot of soup. She looked up at me, surprised. I didn't say a word. I just walked up and took her hands. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Royal engagement cancelled. He walked away from a princess for an unknown woman. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls from friends, family, strangers, even people I hadn't heard from in years. Some were curious, others were furious, and a few quietly said they understood. She sat beside me on the couch, holding a cup of tea, like it was the only solid thing in the world. Her voice was quiet. You didn't have to do this for me, but I shook my head. I didn't do it for you. I did it for us. Because deep down, I knew a marriage without real love is just a performance. and I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life on a stage. But not everyone saw it that way. Within hours, the princess circle began sending their messages. One said I had embarrassed her in front of the world. Another accused her of stealing me away. And the worst one, a warning that I would regret this. For days, photographers camped outside her small apartment. They wanted a picture of the woman who beat the princess. She avoided the windows, kept the curtains closed, but still found ways to smile at me in the kitchen. We cooked together, laughed quietly so the microphones outside wouldn't pick it up, and held hands like the world wasn't watching. One night, I woke up to find her sitting at the table alone. A single envelope lay in front of her. When I opened it, my stomach sank. It was an invitation from the royal family, not for reconciliation, but for a final meeting. It wasn't a request, it was a command, and I knew that if I went alone, things might never be the same again. The final meeting was set in a room so polished it looked like time had never touched it. Marble floors, golden frames, and silence so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat. Across the table sat the princess's father. He didn't waste time. You can still change your mind, he said. The door is open, but it won't be forever. I stayed quiet, so he leaned forward. You're trading a crown for nothing. I looked him in the eye. She's not nothing. And that's when he smirked, like I had said exactly what he expected. Then he slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos, documents, and notes about her past, her family, even the small mistakes she'd made years ago. This is the woman you're choosing, he said, his voice cold. She can't offer you status. She can't protect you. She can't even defend herself against the press. You'll be dragged down with her. But they didn't understand those so-called flaws were the very things that made her real. She wasn't perfect, but she was honest. She didn't wear a mask every time she stepped outside, and that was worth more to me than any title. I pushed the folder back toward him. Keep it, I said. I already know who she is. His expression shifted, just slightly, like maybe I had passed some invisible test. Then he said something I didn't expect. She must be here in 48 hours, or this chapter of your life will close forever. I walked out of that room knowing two things. One, they weren't done trying to pull me back. Two, whatever they had planned next would test both of us harder than ever. The moment I told her what the royal family demanded, her eyes widened, not in fear, but in that quiet disbelief that comes when reality finally feels heavier than a dream. They want me there? She asked softly. Yes, I said. In person. Within 48 hours, she didn't move for a moment. Then she turned away, walking slowly toward the window. Her fingers rested on the glass, and I could see her reflection trembling slightly. What if they try to humiliate me? She asked without turning around. They will, I replied. But we're walking together. Her eyes finally met mine. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between us. She wasn't going to run. She was going to fight. The next 24 hours felt like a blur. Packing a small bag, choosing a simple dress, and rehearsing nothing. She refused to prepare for their approval. I'm not here to impress, she said. I'm here to be myself. When we arrived at the estate, the gates opened slowly, like they were deciding whether to even let us in. The air smelled of roses and polished stone. Every step we took echoed against the massive entrance hall. Waiting for us at the end of the corridor was the princess's father. But this time, he wasn't alone. 5 other members of the family stood beside him, their eyes locked on her, as if she were a question they already knew the answer to. And then, before I could say a word, the oldest among them stepped forward and said, "So, this is the woman you've chosen over royalty." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut the air. She didn't flinch, not even for a second. Her chin lifted slightly, her voice calm but steady. "I'm not here to compete with a princess," she said. "I'm here because he chose me, and I chose him." The words hung in the air. You could see some of them shifting in their seats, the subtle sign of a conversation they weren't prepared for. The oldest woman in the group narrowed her eyes. "Do you know what you've given up?" she asked me. "Yes," I said without hesitation, "and I'd give it up twice if it meant keeping her." The room went still, and then something unexpected happened. The princess's father stepped forward, but instead of speaking to me, he addressed her directly. "Why do you think you're worth my son's future?" Her answer was quiet, but it landed like a stone in a still pond. "Because my worth isn't in titles or riches. It's in how I love, and how I'll stand beside him even when no one else does." For a moment, even the air seemed to pause. No one expected that. They didn't applaud. They didn't smile. But for the first time, their eyes softened. We were invited to sit, but as we took our seats, I could still feel the tension, a silent question hanging in the air, as if the night had just begun to reveal its real challenge.